Every smart business owner has an exit strategy. And in the context of Turo, oftentimes this exit strategy isn't an exit from the entire business, but is instead an exit from an individual car and deciding when is time to get rid of a car in your fleet, as well as how you ultimately determine that it's time to do this. And so in this video, I'm going to be breaking down what my attrition plan is for the vehicles in my own Turo fleet, but I'm also going to be talking about some of the different strategies and things that you can keep in mind if you're trying to develop your own plan. But before we dive into that, I do want to remind you guys that my course, the Car Sharing Masterclass, is on sale for Black Friday, and you can use the code BLACKFRIDAY275 to get $275 off the course. The Car Sharing Masterclass is an incredibly robust course that teaches you everything that you need to know about starting and scaling a car sharing fleet with the same business model that I use. In the course, we teach you things like how to determine which cars are the right cars to buy, how to buy cars for a below market value price, how to streamline your operations and make it as semi-passive as possible, how to set up remote key exchanges, automated messages, how to handle damage claims, maintenance, LLC information, insurance, as well as everything in between. Not only that, but we are so incredibly confident that the Car Sharing Masterclass is the best car sharing course on the market that we offer a robust 30-day money-back guarantee. Now, if you guys are interested in checking this out, you can do so by clicking the link in the description below. And again, you can use the code BLACKFRIDAY275 to get $275 off. If buying cars is something that you're more interested in than sharing cars, then I do have a secondary course called the Car Buying Masterclass, which you can get $125 off by using the code BLACKFRIDAY125. Again, both of the links to these courses are down in the description below. Now, I get asked quite frequently what my thought process is whenever I get rid of cars from my fleet. How do you determine when is the right time to get rid of a car, and ultimately why? And should you have some steadfast rules that you follow in order to make this decision process easier? When talking about retiring a car, there are a lot of factors that you'll need to keep in mind, from mileage to year, overall condition, type of car, and how it fits in with your fleet, maintenance and repairs, and of course your equity position in that car as well. Rental car companies, for example, typically keep a car for an average of 13 months, and they sell the car once it starts racking up more mileage and ultimately will cost more in maintenance cost. Which is ultimately why whenever you rent a car from a traditional rental car company, it is pretty rare to find one that is more than a couple of years old with more than 10 to maybe 30,000 miles on it. But rental car companies can make this work because of the fact that they buy their cars in bulk and at a discount. And for them, when taking into account the price they pay at the point of purchase versus the price they sell the vehicle for, they can make it work given the volume that the car makes while it's being rented. But truthfully, for most of us, especially in the realm of car sharing and Turo, this methodology just isn't going to work. And buying a car new from the dealership and keeping that car for only 13 months is strongly not advised. That is a good way to lose your shirt on depreciation. So I would say that it is generally strongly advised for Turo hosts to take a different approach. Now, one approach that you can take, and one that I know many hosts do take, is basically the hard cutoff approach. And this is basically saying, okay, once our car gets to a certain number of miles or a certain age, we are simply going to take that car off of the Turo or whatever car sharing platform, no questions asked. I am truthfully not a fan of this approach because I think blanket approaches in the world of car sharing, especially in the context of cars, it very rarely results in the best possible outcome. And I strongly believe that if you go with this hard cutoff approach, you're going to be leaving money on the table. Sure, you can say something like, okay, I don't want to rent cars that have more than 100,000 miles, and once our car reaches that point, we're going to get rid of it. But the truth is, 100,000 miles in a car like a Toyota is very different than a car like a BMW. And I strongly believe that a car, at least in the context of peer-to-peer car sharing, shouldn't be judged by the year or even the mileage of the vehicle. And instead, you should be judging that car based off of the full context performance of that vehicle. Another approach that many people take is the equity play, basically deciding to keep a car until it has a positive equity and then they sell it. Then they buy another new car until that car has positive equity and then they sell that, and then they sort of rinse and repeat this so that their fleet always stays fresh. Now, the only way that this approach can actually make you money and work at the same time is if you're someone that is able to make a lot more money off of that car on a monthly basis than what that car costs. This cost would not only need to include things like your monthly payment, your insurance, your tracking, maintenance, and repairs, but also your depreciation. And this sort of goes into the second way that this can work, and kind of the second factor that has to be taken into account is depreciation. This is very similar to what rental car companies do, is they basically sell their cars at the right time to where they don't eat a ton of depreciation costs, but they're also able to keep their fleet constantly refreshed. And I'm not going to knock this approach because hundreds of different Turo hosts and car rental companies go this route, so there is definitely validity behind it. But I think in the context of car sharing, this again is not advised because the best part about car sharing is renting out cars that are fully paid off, and this is where you can make the most money. And so by selling cars as soon as you have positive equity in those cars, well, it puts you in a position to where you're never able to make money off of that car while it is extremely low cost to operate, which is basically my entire business model. I also think that this is where people can get into trouble with not taking depreciation into account. In my experience, Turo hosts, but especially newer ones, seldomly calculate depreciation properly, and as a result, a lot of Turo hosts feel like they're making more money than they really are because that depreciation cost isn't realized until they sell the car. So I think that if you are really a numbers-driven person, if you truly know the numbers behind your business, this is a perfectly valid approach, but I think it probably is a risky one for most Turo hosts out there. But in my opinion, keeping the car past the point of paying it off, and certainly past the point of positive equity, that's the way to go down. At least the way to go in order to make the most money. Again, that is entirely dictated by the car still being reliable at the point in which it is paid off, because an unreliable car is never going to make you money regardless of whether it's paid off or not. Now, the attrition approach that I would recommend to Turo hosts is also the same one that I use for my own fleet, and that is basically not having any hard, fast rule of when and how to get rid of a car, but instead viewing every car on a case-by-case basis and keeping track of individual vehicle performance. Whenever we're deciding whether or not we want to sell a car or keep a car, there are a few key factors that we keep in mind. First is, how much does the car cost to keep on the road? My fleet is 100% paid off. So for us, we may have an underperformer that doesn't do great on Turo income-wise, but as long as the car is relatively repair-free, we will keep that car in our fleet because a repair-free car is an incredibly high-margin car. Once a car starts costing us too much money in repair and maintenance costs, that's ultimately when we will make the decision to sell it. Another key factor is, how do guests like the car? One of the biggest weights that we take into account when it comes to keeping a car or selling one is guest perception. We keep a very, very close eye on reviews, and if we find that a car is just getting too many poor star reviews, we'll get rid of it. And on a similar note, if we find that a car is just having persistent issues, even if those issues are relatively small, we'll also get rid of that car. For example, we just sold a Ford Focus from our fleet about 2 months ago. It was actually the oldest and longest standing car in our fleet, and we ultimately got rid of it because for about 6 months, this car was having a persistent alternator issue. Because the car was older and lower value, we couldn't justify spending the money to properly diagnose what was going on, but we also certainly couldn't trust that the car would be reliable for a guest, so we simply sold it. For my fleet, cost of repairs, persistent repairs, and customer reviews, these are the 3 biggest factors, and truthfully, really the only factors that we take into account whenever we decide whether or not it's time to get rid of a car altogether. A car that is causing poor guest experience just isn't worth keeping, even if that car technically makes good money. Another thing to keep in mind is that there may come a time where your hand is forced on you and you have to get rid of a car regardless of whether you want to or not. For example, a recall. A Turo host cannot rent out cars that have open recalls, so if you have a car that gets hit with a no remedy recall, for example, last year 3 of my cars were hit with a no remedy recall from Hyundai and Kia, and they got enlisted from my fleet for nearly 9 months. This is a scenario that, depending on the car, and especially if the car has a car payment, it probably is worth it to just get rid of it. Another unfortunate scenario may be if a car gets enlisted from Turo permanently due to poor guest reviews or maintenance issues. And this is ultimately a scenario that you want to avoid. You never want to put yourself in a position to where you're getting rid of your cars because Turo is forcing you to. You want to have that choice, but if Turo does get to the point where they do enlist your car, obviously at that point you'll most likely be best off just selling it, because cars that are enlisted by Turo can't even be relisted by another person, for example, a co-host. And truthfully, both of these scenarios, the context of the recall as well as the car that's been enlisted by Turo because of issues, they perfectly exemplify why I'm ultimately very pro low debt for a Turo fleet. Because if your car does get enlisted or if there is a recall, you have flexibility of what you're able to do. And you're able to decide, okay, I want to keep the car because it has no payments, or I want to sell the car, and you're able to do that because you don't have too much negative equity. The point is, there are a variety of different scenarios that may come up for a Turo host to make them want to get rid of a few cars in their Turo fleet. And I strongly encourage for every vehicle in your fleet, and all of the different reasons for selling that car are evaluated on a case-by-case basis. And by keeping your debt low, you can really have the freedom to make these decisions as needed. Like always, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it, so make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.